Welcome back to Twist of Fate, a small business podcast. You see, this podcast is for those entrepreneurs, small business owners, inventors out there thinking about a new business venture. And I can tell you personally, as a small business owner, entrepreneurship is one of the most rewarding, most important, but one of the most difficult things I've ever did in my entire life. So we're hoping to explore with founders, small business owners that are doing it in the real world successfully and share with you what their twist of fate was, why they started their business, and we hope that you learn a lot from that. So today, we're actually here with a very inspirational person for me personally. We're here with Russ Angold, who, for me, I think is one of the more inspirational entrepreneurs that I've ever seen, and responsible for the commercialization of some really innovative technology that changes the lives and independence for people living with spinal cord injury and stroke. Russ, my friend, I'm really excited to chat with you today. Welcome to Twist of Fate.
Thanks, Doug. Happy to be here.
So Russ, why don't, you and I we've worked together before, we're working together on stuff now, but why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and, what you do right now, and then we're going to go back in time and start talking about how your story started.
Sure. So, name's Russ Angold. Currently, I do a lot of consulting and starting new businesses. My background is in agricultural engineering. I have my PE in mechanical, but I got into a lot of automation and robotics straight out of school. But ever since I was a little kid, like, my parents knew I was going to be an engineer, because every toy I got, I would take apart and put it back together to see how everything worked. And so I think,
when you were a kid, where did you grow up then?
I grew up in Grass Valley, California, up in the foothills between Sacramento and Tahoe.
Awesome. What kind of stuff were you building then?
Back then, man, it was like taking a motorcycle engine and ripping it out and putting it into a go-kart, right? And having to shift over the engine and burning ourselves on the exhaust. Learning how to weld, right? When I was probably in 6th grade, to try to fix stuff so we could go out and use it. Grew up in the country, so we had to make our own entertainment. We didn't have, we had like 4 channels on TV, right? And so.
And you had a lot of brothers, right?
Yeah, so I have 6 brothers.
So, your poor mother.
Yeah. We all turned out to be really good boys, but yeah, it was always controlled chaos at our house. It was either stuff was breaking, people were going to the hospital. I mean, it was nonstop action.
And they're inventors too, right? Like they kind of
a lot of entrepreneurs. We're all in different businesses, different segments. But I think we all have, my mom grew up in a big family, and her parents were always like telling her no, not to do things, to get hurt. And she made like a conscious decision to never tell us not to do anything. So even when we were on the roof, like getting ready to jump off the roof onto the trampoline in front of the house, which was like a 14-foot drop, she would stand there and she wouldn't tell us not to do it. She would just, ready with the car keys to take us to the hospital. So we all grew up with, a adventurous spirit, right? Willingness to take risks, and we're all competitive, right? So we all like to go hang out with each other and go on vacation together. So it's like, hey, if you want to hang out and play with us, you guys better make some money so we can go on some fun vacations.
That's awesome. Now, so as you grew up, this building and creating things continued, but then you went for agricultural engineering. Is it UC Berkeley or which?
Oh, I went to Cal Poly. So yeah, I was originally going to go for mechanical engineering, but my high school ag teacher, which taught me ag mechanics, we raised animals. Great teacher, really respect the man, big influence on my life. He told me, he said, Junior, you got to go down to Cal Poly and become an ag engineer. And I was like, I want to be a mechanical engineer. He said, I know, Junior. It's Danny Kemp. He said, Junior, just go down there and check it out. Trust me. I was like, okay. So went down, toured the campus, visited the ME department. And then I'll never forget, I walk around the corner of this barn. It's a big building, Building 8 on Cal Poly's campus. And I turn the corner and there's this big asphalt and concrete like pavilion out in front of this big shop, right? It's a building full of shops. And there's all this cool equipment. There's these guys on this thing that's going around with these powered rakes that had made an olive harvester. There's all sorts of cool equipment. And I start talking to one of the professors, and I'm like, so who built all this stuff? He's like, oh, all the students built all this stuff. All our students built all the projects, right? We teach them how to do everything in the shops. And then that's part of your education is you learn how to build stuff, and you finish with a senior mechanical design project, and you guys build it in 10 weeks. And yeah, it can be whatever you want. And so I was like, okay, that's it. And I realized another cool part of the major, right? It was bioresource and agriculture engineering is the name of the major, is guys who graduate there and become civil engineers, ag engineers, mechanical engineers. They emphasize on water. So as an 18-year-old, like not a whole lot of people know exactly what they want to do with their life and what industry they want to be in. And so for me, it was just like, hey, I wasn't narrowing options. I could go all those paths, and I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I just like to build things and solve problems. That's all I want to do. And so it was a great major for me. Really loved it.
And let me ask you this question. So at that time, this is young Russ, right? Now, did you know you were going to be an entrepreneur then? Did you know you were going to start businesses and invent things, or you were just open-minded at the time?
I was just open-minded. I had no idea what I wanted to do or what I was going to do, but I was always the guy that would like try to. It's pretty funny because my brother Ryan and I. So I knew I was going to do something at an early age. Because my brother Ryan and I, we were only 18 months apart, and whenever we got a task from our mom or chores to do, I would be the guy that was trying to figure out a way to make it easier. Like say they dropped off 12 yards of compost and we had to move it. I was going to figure out a way to make it easier. And my brother Ryan would just be like start plowing through it, and about halfway through, I would come out with whatever idea or something we figured out, and then we'd finish. But I always was the guy trying to figure out a better way to do stuff. Like it didn't matter what it was. I'm like, there's got to be a better way.
Yeah, and you did. So if we fast forward, then I mean, I think one of the major landmark technical accomplishments was the creation of a medical exoskeleton. I think that you worked on. I mean, this is you want to talk about like design challenges is to have a person stand up and walk upright that could have complete or incomplete spinal cord injury. How did that whole thing start? Like, how did you even go down that path? Like, that's really something.
Yeah. So that's like you said, it's a twist of fate, man. So Ryan and I were the closest brothers in age, and we both played football together in high school. Ryan was set on becoming a Navy SEAL. Ryan liked to do the hardest thing physically possible, right? He's like, tell me what the hardest thing is. And
he's a big dude. I've seen his pictures. He's a big dude.
He's a big dude. He's a smart dude, and he's ultra competitive. So he's like, give me the hardest thing, dude. I'm going to be the best at it. That's just his mentality. So it was like, well, the hardest thing to do is get into like the academies, and harder than that is to become a Navy SEAL, right? It's the elite special forces. He's like, okay, I'm going to do that, right? So he went down this path. He went to the Naval Academy, graduated in 1997. But he came home that's at winter break for Christmas, his plebe year, freshman year at the Naval Academy. And at the time he was playing football at the Naval Academy, and I had gotten recruited to play football at West Point because they thought, oh, this would be great. You got two brothers at the academy, both playing football against each other. This would be awesome. And so Ryan comes home and he's telling me stories about the academy. And I was just like, bro, I have a problem with authority. So like nothing he was saying sounded appealing at all.
And that hasn't changed. I don't think that's changed. I still think you have a problem with authority.
I know. Well, I don't know. I don't know. Call it what you want. I am what I am, right?
Yeah.
So, I said, look, you go become a Navy SEAL. I want to be an engineer, and someday I'll make you cool shit. That's the deal, right? So that was the deal. So I went on to Cal Poly and worked on my engineering project or degree. And flash forward, well, when I graduated Cal Poly, I went back to the Bay Area, and I was working for an automation company, and that's where I met Nate Harding. So Nate and I, Nate and I, he had never hired an agricultural engineer before. So again, it's all these little things that align people. So I had submitted my resume. He was coming down to campus to recruit engineers, and I had submitted my resume, and I was the last person of the day to actually interview with him. And so we start talking, and what piqued his interest was my senior project from the Bray major. So my senior project, or my senior mechanical design class project with my two buddies, Miles and Bobby, was to build a 1,200 horsepower tractor pulling tractor. So we built this thing in 12 weeks, and we used an Allison aircraft engine out of it. So the Allison aircraft engine was from World War II, big V12 used in aircraft, used the P-51, P-38s, P-39s. Anyways, Nate had worked on those engines in a drag shop in Texas when he was growing up, and so that piqued his interest. And so he actually came with me. We took him back to the shop. I showed him the tractor right after he finished up, and ended up working for him. So, I wouldn't have gotten that job had Nate and I not had that Allison engine connection. So anyways, worked there for a while, and then, the economy's changed and moved on. And then I got a call in early 2004 from Nate saying, "Hey, I'm working on this exoskeleton program up at UC Berkeley for a DARPA project."
That's where the Berkeley came in, yeah. So he was in Casaroni's lab then?
I think he knew Casaroni. He was working there as a consultant, trying to help with the power supply. And they had finished the first version of Bleaks. And so they needed some professionals to come make it better and turn it into more of a production version. And so
the power source then was gas powered, right? Like this.
Oh, the gasoline RC engine, man. The things, you had to wear earplugs. It was super loud and heavy. But to me, I saw the video of them walk, and you can still search on YouTube, like find a early video.
I've seen it. No, that's how I know.
Yeah. And it's Adam Zoss, one of our engineers, walking around in it. So he sends me this video, and I look at it, and I'm like, "Oh my God, this is it!" And I go home and tell my wife. I said, "Look." She's like, "What?" I'm like, "Check out this video." And she's like, "What's that?" And here's this. You can hear the engine in the background running. Yeah. And so, anyways, I literally quit my job the next day. I'm like, "This is perfect. I got a contract for a year with UC Berkeley. I want to start my own consulting business and do my own thing. So this is perfect. We'll do this." So that's how it started. And then things got interesting really quick.
Nate and yourself having engineering roots together.
Mm-hmm. Then I call him gearhead. We were both gearheads.
Gearheads, right? 100%. Yeah. And you both are gearheads. Like I mean, in technical knowledge, you guys know about a lot of cool stuff. Cars, engines. So then at what point did you guys go and really, because there's more to it than just the technical problems. I know it was personal for you. So
yeah. So week one, so I literally quit my job, leave the family. I've actually lived with my wife's grandfather in the city while we were trying to figure out how we're going to transition the family back up here. So started immediately and come up in week one. Actually, I think it was before I even got there. I showed the video to my brother. I was like, "Bro, check this out, dude. I'm working on this thing. I just quit my job. We're going to build this thing." And at the time, the whole point of Bleaks was to reduce the injuries to soldiers, right? They carry a ton of weight between their body armor, their backpack, their gear. I mean, these guys carry 100 pounds on a regular basis. And so the whole point was to try to prevent them from getting hurt. And so I showed the video to my brother, and we're talking on the phone. He's like, "Dude, we're never going to use that." And I was like, "Wait, what?" He says, "No, seriously, we're never going to use it, dude. It's too loud. It's too slow. It looks heavy. It looks complicated. It looks like it'll break." He's like, "That's a bad idea." And I was like, "Okay, well, I got a year contract. We'll figure it out." But it was a good life lesson. The life lesson was, whenever you're looking at a new technology, and I do this now, without a doubt, whenever I'm looking at something new or a new venture, talk to customers, man. Talk to customers early, see what the feedback is, and be open-eared for it, right? Because don't go in there with
don't fall in love with the invention, right?
Don't fall in love with the invention, man, because customers will give you really good insight to whether you got something or you don't. And he was right. Like, we didn't have something there. And so I show up.
But that was for military application.
Yeah, for military. But when we got there, started understanding the power supply requirements, and this thing used like 2 kilowatts, right? Which is it's unsustainable on a real level, right? You just can't carry that much. No one's going to walk around with a gas-powered engine on their back. And so that was week 1. I was like, okay, well, we got to figure out the power problem. We got to figure out a better way to do this. And then we did a demo, and I get a call during the demo to DARPA from my mom. And she's like, hey, your brother just had an accident. He broke his neck. He's in the hospital. He's okay, but he's in the hospital. We think he's paralyzed. And I was like, okay.
That's not the call that anybody wants.
No, not the call that anybody wants. And so I get on the next flight. Next morning, I'm flying out to Virginia Beach to go see him. And on the whole flight out there, I'm drawing up plans. It's like, okay. And I didn't know anything about spinal cord injury at the time. So I'm thinking, okay, well, we can make an exoskeleton to help him walk again, right? We'll just, actuators here, and it'll be a little different than what we're doing. But we can
on the flight there.
On the flight there.
You were already thinking going down that road.
Going down the road. And so I literally have a notebook, right? And I actually bought 2 notebooks. And so I got the one notebook, I'm drawing all the ideas in, walk into my brother's hospital room, and here's this guy, right? Navy SEAL, Bronze Star from Afghanistan. His biceps are like this big around. And he's like, I'm like, don't worry, brother, we'll get you up and walking again. He's like, oh, I can walk. I just can't move my arms. And so what he had was called central cord syndrome. So he was C6, C7, but it damages the outside of your spinal column, which damages the outer nerves, which feed the upper part of your body. So he had lost most of his function to his hands. I think he had like 7 to 10% of the nerves were firing in his arms and hands. And so, these biceps couldn't even pick up a pencil, but he could walk, which was a godsend, right? And so I kept my notebook. I gave him a notebook. I said, well, document all this as you recover. Keep notes on, what you're doing and how you're doing it. And so after I left, it probably took him about 2 years, I'd say, to get back to normal human strength.
Sure.
But he did it by slowly doing tasks, right? Like, he started by changing the knobs on his house, and he basically remodeled his house over the course of 2 years, working up more endurance and more strength to where, he's fully functional. And he actually just sent me a video last week. He sent me a video of him squatting 410 pounds, which is his, new max after post-injury. He said he's never be as strong as he once was, but he calls himself the world's strongest incomplete quadriplegic.
That's amazing. No, listen, veterans have a special place in the hearts of my company, 3 Steps Forward. I don't know if you knew that we partner with the San Diego Goals to acknowledge veteran business owners for their contributions to the country, but then also their contributions to the community. So I think your brother's an inspiration to hear that he recovered, and that just the optimism he had facing crippling injury like that. That's a hero right there. Like, make no mistake, like that's amazing.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, he is the most mentally tough guy I know on the planet, right? And he was just like, oh, I'll beat this. Like, his level of optimism never waned. And I'm sure he had dark moments, but he just has that always positive attitude, always like, oh, we're going to fix this. We're going to beat it. We're going to make it better. And so, yeah, that definitely, I think, helped him pull through, because it's a lot of work, right? I don't care what you have any kind of injury, man. It's hard 100%, going through 100%. Rehab and recovery and getting back to normalcy. So,
yeah. and not just physically, the mental part of it too, right? Yeah, the mental part. So what I'm hearing though is a potentially impossible or difficult situation planted the seeds in your mind to innovate. Clearly, right. So you took those notes on potentially fearing that he won't walk again, and you took that back to this gas-powered exoskeleton project, right?
Right. Yeah. So It was basically, there's a couple of realizations there. One, military customers saying that what we have isn't good enough, right? Nowhere near what they would want as a solution. So I'm like, that's talking to the customer. So you got to listen. Two, we had the technical challenges of the way the Bleeps was built, and we had to solve that power problem. So we had to solve that problem. And three, there may be a huge potential market for people that have lost the ability to walk. Mm-hmm. That is probably, it's like, when you're looking at it, it's like, okay, what's an easier problem to solve? So putting an exoskeleton and giving someone the ability to walk that cannot. Now, it doesn't have to be, they don't have to run, right? We just got to get them up and walk, because that benefit of getting them up and walking is so big. Mm-hmm. Versus, we're going to put exoskeletons on, athletes and make them even better than they already are, right? So
like augment their ability,
augment them, which is really hard to do. Like, look at the NFL. No basketball player. No one likes to wear a knee brace, let alone a whole exoskeleton, right? So
and think of the tolerance of their strength. I mean, you take a guy, LeBron James, 6'8", it's like a Mack truck. Like how do you build something to augment him, right? That's really
right. And so
although I bet you'll one day get there. I bet one day.
I think it's coming. But the point was, like, let's start with something that we think can be very impactful and really change people's lives, and is a more realistic application of where the technology is today, right? Because we just weren't ready. But we had to solve the power problem either way, and so we ended up redesigning it to kind of mimic how humans work, and making the structure so that it could support its own weight without burning a bunch of power. Like, you don't get tired standing there. Well, the other exoskeleton would burn 2 kilowatts even if it wasn't moving. So we had to solve that problem, which we did. We continued to work on load carriage stuff for able body, but we really saw the potential in the medical space to really make a difference.
Mm-hmm. It's either Nate, you, or someone else. You guys then decided you're going to make a company. Like, you felt confident enough in what the project that you wanted to commercialize.
So once we figured out the low power solution, right? How to make an exoskeleton that could carry weight without, we went from 2 kilowatts to 2 watts. So, orders of magnitude down. And once we figured out that, then we're like, okay, now we have something. So we actually licensed the technology back from the university and started the company, which was Berkeley Bionics at the time. Mm-hmm. Is what we named it originally. So started that was 2005. We started the company. So it was almost a year later when we started the company.
With the goal in mind that you would do a medical exoskeleton, but you haven't quite identified stroke or spinal cord injury or indication.
No, we hadn't figured that out yet. And we were still trying to figure out the technology. And we had to be pretty opportunistic, right? Because we were a startup. And so it's like, and we were grant funded by DARPA. And then we made what we called the Ekso Hiker, the low powered, low carriage solution to the Army. And that wasn't the path they wanted to go down. So we lost our funding. So now you're sitting there, right? We started a company, we're out of funding. And we started looking at grants to work on technology in the space. And so we found some stuff. The military kept us going for a little bit. We kept working on some projects for them to try to improve on what we had. We found some projects through the National Science Foundation, NSF, to work on, powered prosthetics. So we started looking at some of those applications. And then we finally got a grant to look at spinal cord injury as a solution. So it took us a while to get enough capital, right, in the company to go after everything we wanted to do, because we were self-funded basically. And so that took years, and we finally built it up. And I think we did our first demo of a medical exo in 2000, and it was right around 2007. We had a rough prototype of repurposing, some existing parts to make a concept and actually test it on a user. And by the way, the first test was a total disaster. Like, it was not great by any means. I'm glad we don't actually have it on video, but we did learn a lot, and we figured out what we needed to do to make it successful.
And that took, if my math is right, 3 years of development.
Yeah.
To even get to that first kind of, it's like not minimal viable product, right? Like just like prototype.
Just prototype, because we were still trying to solve technical solutions. Like back then, we had to invent everything. We had to invent the sensors. We had to invent, just how we were going to build these actuators. So we were making everything. And thanks to cell phones, like now all these sensors that, people use in robotics are, cheap and ubiquitous. But back then, man, everything was expensive and big. And so you had to like try to figure out ways to solve all these problems. So we were solving a lot of problems that, you didn't necessarily want to solve. You just had to try to solve your problem. So that's why things took long.
What's amazing though is from those first efforts, it is really snowballed. You guys created an industry. I mean, now you fast forward, if an individual experiences a spinal cord injury and they go to a rehabilitation center, they can begin to gait train and walk upright really because of this labor of love that you guys did a long time ago.
Right.
I don't know if you think of it that way, but
I don't, but you can tell it's changed, because in the early days, when you travel, people would say, what do you work on? Exoskeletons. And they'd be like, exo what? And that really didn't change until like Iron Man came out. Then everyone's like, then you'd say exoskeletons, like, oh, like Iron Man? You're like, yeah, no, not like that. But now, like I was just coming back from Chicago last week, and I was at the bar at the airport and talking to some guy, and he worked in a hospital system, and he asked what I did. I was like, oh, I used to do exoskeletons. He's like, oh, we have one of those. And so like to see it come full circle to where now, like if you talk to most medical professionals, especially if they're in the exoskeleton space, like they've either heard or seen of an exoskeleton. So to go from being completely unknown to people knowing what they are and knowing how to use them, it's pretty cool to see.
Full transparency to the listeners there. Later on, I became an employee of Ekso Bionics. And as the head of marketing there, I worked with you on a lot of things, like the exoskeletons for medical, but also you moved into industrial, right? Like manufacturing.
Right. Well, we finally saw that we had, the medical was on its way, and it's still, there's some hurdles there in terms of insurance reimbursement and things that are kind of out of an engineer's control. But we saw this opening now that people knew what exoskeletons were. We started getting inquiries from construction companies, from manufacturing companies, like, hey, where's our Iron Man? And we're like, well, it's not going to be that. So we started going out and, again, talking to customers before you get started to try to understand what are the real problems you're trying to solve. And we found a couple killer apps for exoskeleton technology and started developing those. And that launched the Ekso Work side for the industrial. So, and now like the vests we made, there's many companies now are making those vests, but, we're making vests that basically make your arms weightless. And so guys that are either in construction and working overhead in ceilings, electricians, plumbers,
piping,
or the automotive and aircraft manufacturing, working underneath cars, right? Shoulder injury is the number one injury. And so figuring out a way to simply and effectively solve that problem, and at a price point that made sense, right? That was the big key for industrial, is no one's going to buy $100,000 Ekso for mass production for manufacturing workers. It just doesn't work.
It goes against their business model, right? They're trying to drive cost out.
Yeah, that doesn't work. But if you can make something for like $5,000, then it gets interesting, right? And so we had figured out ways to do that, and so started pursuing those ventures as well.
So let me ask you this. So I think for a lot of the inventors that are listening in our audience, you're an example, and that again, you've mentioned Adam, Katie, Nate, like Kurt, you guys accomplished the impossible. Like if you go back, let's say you go back 25 years and say, hey, how do you make someone stand upright?
Right.
And the answer would have been, you can't. Whereas now you can. how do you internalize that? Like back then, like, were there times that you thought, okay, we're going to fail? Like, it's not possible. Like, how do you carry, what was your state of mind while going through this?
You know, I guess to be an entrepreneur, you gotta have thick skin and you gotta be pretty robust, right? And your stick-to-itiveness has to be there. So you got to pick something that you're passionate about and willing to go through that roller coaster ride. Because yes, there's days where like, oh man, we are screwed. This isn't going to work, or you hit a limit, or you did something. But you know, I go back to my mom and saying, you know, are you willing to take a risk, right? And we used to joke I joke all the time with my wife. It's like, look, this either works, or, you know, we go get a trailer. Like either way is a fine outcome for me. Like it's worth the try.
That's a special woman. So let me say something though. That's a special woman. Not everybody's going to stand with their spouse and have the same risk tolerance,
right?
That an entrepreneur may have. But it sounds like sounds like your wife's ride or die, man.
Yeah, she's ride or die. She's got me all the way. So, and I got her back. Like when I stopped working full time, she's like, I want to go back and become a high school chemistry teacher. I was like, cool, go for it. I got you. And so, yeah, she's always been my rock and support. And so having that also helps, because you need someone else when you're going through those roller coasters of the ups and downs, right? I mean, it's 100%. I talked to entrepreneurs. I was talking to a guy the other day, and he made this comment. He's like, man, he came out of a meeting and the meeting didn't go well. And, you know, the company was hurting in a bad spot. And I talked about the roller coaster of a startup. And he said, somebody once told me, man, when you're on your back, the only way to look is up. And I was like, I'm gonna use that. That is a great comment. And then I talked to him a week later, and he had a good meeting, and you know, he's feeling good and high, and you know, he's got a solution. But you're gonna have those moments where you can just hear it in his voice, right? He's just down, bummed out, tired, burnt out, and you need a support system, whether it's a spouse or friends, to get you through that, or you know, other colleagues you work with.
No question.
Yeah, you need a support group to go through it, because it's
I mean, for me, Russ, we're about to go into my second year that I founded, started, 100% funded it, bootstrapped it myself, 3 steps forward. And I can tell you, this is clearly the most rewarding yet most difficult thing I've ever did. I mean, I've never worked this hard in my life. And you're right about the one day it's a sensational high, and another day it's a sensational low. But this is one thing about you I always wanted to ask. How do you have this optimism when, because I've seen it where as a company, we have challenges. As an entrepreneur, you have challenges. It seems like you're always, you know, the glass is half full with you. I'm curious about that. Like, is there a source of your strength? Is it back your mother? Like, what?
I don't know, man. I've always been that guy, though. Like, I've always been the guy. No. I've always been the optimistic guy. Like, I've always been able to weather storms, regardless of what it is. I mean, I don't know what it goes back to, faith, family, but I do remember. So I went to Catholic school for was that up until like first grade, I think. And I remember yeah, and my mom was really worried about me, right, in school. And so when they did like the parent nun conferences,
parent
nuns. I guess we had nuns there.
Yeah. I did. You don't know this, but I did Catholic school up until high school. So
okay. So yeah, no, the teacher, even the nun said it back then. She was like, "Oh, I'm really worried about Russ," and she's like, "Oh, don't worry about Russ. Like, he'll be fine. He's got so much confidence. Like, don't worry about him. You know, keep an eye on Ryan." Right. That was her comment.
Fascinating. And then look at Ryan when he grew up, right? Like,
yeah. And Ryan's a confident guy, right?
Yeah.
So,
right.
Very confident. So, but at the same time, like, you know, I've told people this story. I stopped going to school on my own accord in the 4th grade. Right. I had decided I had learned enough. I no longer need to go to school. I didn't tell my parents. I would just hide at the bus stop and not go to school. And I was working on my underground fort. And they finally caught on to it. Like after a week and a half, I would go down to the bus stop, go home every day. Mom say, "How was school?" School was fine. You know, I packed my lunch. I was good. they finally caught on to it. So, but me having kids and seeing them as fourth graders and thinking like, oh my God, like that's insane for me to decide on my own that, you know what, I don't need to go to school anymore in fourth grade. So I don't know what it is. I don't know.
No. I think those are what some, so, and this is important for a lot of the small business owner listeners in there. What some could view as deviant behavior is actually some of the signs of the type of lateral thinking needed to create change.
Right.
Like, you know, to be honest with you, I think the seeds of discontent from following a routine, and you knew that, like, I was a corporate guy for a long time, right? But there's some of us that are willing to step out of the line to make a change. And I think some of it is getting comfortable with the fact that you're not like other people, or that you are thinking these things, but it's not like a bad thing, you know. It's so surrounded. So has it been difficult for you? Have you, you surround yourself with a lot of positive people? And that's a key ingredient. I think that's a key ingredient to be an entrepreneur, right? Like, you have to surround yourself with positive people.
Yeah, positive people. And then but I think like my challenge, and I know like I struggle with, is being overly optimistic, like jumping at the Ekso opportunity, right? Without doing my homework. Mm-hmm. And so like I have to make a very conscious effort to slow my roll, because I get excited about things. And so I have to slow down and be like, all right, let's go through a process and vet this thing with a critical eye, because I don't know if it's I don't know what it is, but I'm an optimist, and so I got to check that too. So you know, there's I think
it's a wise observation you're making. I think it's a
and my wife checks me too, because she knows my personality. She'll be like, "Hey, are you sure you thought this through?" And like, "What about this? What about this?" And she's a very
I think it's the principal problem of the inventor's mindset, is to be able to be disciplined enough to pick a winner from a loser and to kill early. I mean, that was one of the things that, you know, like GE, I learned in my previous life that, you know, if you don't kill something early, it's going to take a lot of resource. It's going to take a lot of time, but that's difficult. And I think that many of the inventors listening would do the same as you, is to make that observation. It's great that you're self-aware of it. Now, Russ, what other projects, you know, are there any other projects that you're working on now that you want to let the audience know about? Or is there things that you're really proud of that you're doing now?
Yeah, well, now it's crazy. Like, so I'll say this as a caveat before I get started. Like for you, working on your business, the one thing, you got one thing, right? And that's the sole focus. And that's true. That's how I was at Ekso. And as an entrepreneur, I still firmly believe that is the best path to success. Like, if you can find that one thing and just have that thing and drive that thing and just focus on that one thing, I think that is extremely helpful, and you get way more done. You're way more productive. With that said, I'm doing the exact opposite. I'm doing the exact opposite, which, you know, I don't know if it's the ADD in me or what, but you know, I worked at Ekso for 15 something years of my life. So getting back out there and doing different things, you know, I'm looking for, I guess I'm in the process of trying to find that next big thing that what I really want to do, but I'm also teaming up with, you know, former roommates and, you know, some family and friends, and working on a bunch of different projects on everything from, you know, an augmented full body VR experience to starting a direct marketing beef business to doing consulting for agricultural companies. I think there's a huge opportunity for any entrepreneurs out there to bring cool existing technology to the ag space. You just got to understand those customers, because they have really different requirements than most customers you dealt with. So I think there's a huge opportunity there. Then I do some advising, right, of entrepreneurs and startups. So I'm all over the map. Oh, and I run my kids' high school booster club, which takes a ton of time, right? So I'm all over the map, and the context shifting is exhausting.
But you gotta like it like that, though. I mean, your nature.
But I love every minute of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, no,
your nature is to do that.
My nature is to do that, so it works well for me. I know I would be more productive if I focused on one thing, but I'm really enjoying the difference, and I think I've always liked that. Being able to connect the dots across industries, like, or seeing something from one industry and pulling an idea from here and an idea from here and making something new. I think there's, I have a knack for it. And so I like doing that. So working across industries gives me that option.
I have an opinion on this, because I do think you're right that if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have to be, and you're going to grow. Like if you're really going to climb the mountain and go for it, you have to be laser focused on something. I mean, you're right. For me, I mean, every moment of the last 2 years, I've been laser focused. But I'll tell you this. I feel the only way that you can commit sustainably to being laser focused to something is, one, you have to be passionate about it.
Yep.
And two, like, it's in your wheelhouse that deep down inside, you can do it.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, my theory is, I think you're doing a lot of very cool things, and I'm proud to be doing them with you. I can tell you that. Like, that's almost dream come true, because watching you in the early days of Ekso Bionics, I was watching from corporate, like this guy's got it. He's got it figured out. Like, these guys, I want to be a part of it. But I can tell you, I think once you find that next thing that you're truly passionate for, oh man, like, again, 25 years ago, nobody would have said that you could stand upright. But I think it is in people like you that you can go and do the impossible. So, hey man, I'm going to be waiting for it. So I can tell you, Russ, I really, really appreciate you coming out and talking with me today on Twist of Fate. If there's inventors out there, if there's entrepreneurs out there, if even there's investors out there that are interested in keeping up with you, how do they get in touch with you? You're on LinkedIn, you're on other social channels? Like,
I'm on LinkedIn. It's probably the best way. I have my email. That's easy. It's just my name, Russ Angold at Gmail. That's how you get a hold of me. If you want to email me directly, that's fine. I'm happy to help. I love, and it's really interesting. The thing I like most about talking to entrepreneurs, because at the end of the day, like, Exoskeletons was all about the customers, and start talking to entrepreneurs. There's a lot of thing that for mentors, if you're looking at mentors, there's a lot of thing people that have been through this know, and they don't even know they know it until you ask the question. Mm-hmm. Very deep inside there was some experience, right? And it's in there somewhere. Mm-hmm. So I encourage you guys to reach out to people that have been there and done that. They're a wealth of knowledge, and everyone I've always talked to, they're happy to share and happy to help. So the Entrepreneur Network's great to be a part of, and just reach out. People want to help.
Yeah. No, Russ, so true. So true. Again, I thank you. And on a personal note, you're still an inspiration to me. A lot of my willingness to step out of the line, whether you realize it or not, came from you. And I don't know if you knew that. I don't know if you think of it that way, but you made a difference. And I can tell you, my company and my successes would not be possible without seeing somebody that I can tell you that felt confident, and it's okay to step out of the line and do something different. So I appreciate you for that, Russ.
Right on. Well, glad to hear it. Glad I could help. And this has been fun.
Okay. We'll do it again, brother. So take care, Russ. And if you want to find out more about Russ Angold, you heard he accepts email, and you can find him on LinkedIn and social media channel. If you want to learn more also about this episode and Russ, you can check out twistoffatepodcast.com. Russ, always a pleasure. Take care, brother.
All right. You too.
Twist of Fate is hosted by Doug Younger. It's produced by John Lundvid and Matthew Brown at Ekso Creative. Melanie Filardo schedules our guests. Moni Yu designs our graphics, and Enrique Pimentel manages our digital life. Our theme music is by Jamie Bathgate. Special thanks to all of our patrons. You can support the show by visiting patreon.com/Twist of Fate podcast. Thanks for listening.